Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro rolling out hour number 3. Chris Wynn also joining us in studio. You know, we talk a little NBA basketball here and there because the season just started just a few weeks ago. And, of course, college basketball season in order. We'll get to UNLV in just a little bit. But I'm sure you guys remember this story, even if you're an avid sports fan. The name is Tim Donaghy. He is a former NBA referee, and now he has relived this officiating scandal where he got involved with the wrong people. He had to go to prison over it, this gambling scandal. Some people say he may have fixed games on purpose. He claims he did not. But certainly he gave information and key information on some of these games. And now there's a new movie out about his life called Inside Game that is out in theaters. Former NBA referee Tim Donaghy right now joining us live on the line. Tim, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Tim, I got to ask you this. There's not many people on the planet that have had Hollywood movies made after them. You know, I remember I once interviewed Billy Beane, and we remember the movie in regards to Moneyball and Brad Pitt playing him. And I asked him, hey, what's it like, you know, to see someone playing you? So I'm going to ask you the same question. What was it like the first time you saw this movie, somebody actually playing you in your life?
Extremely embarrassing. It was embarrassing in 2007 when I got into trouble, and it's just as embarrassing now to see Eric Mabius play me in the big screen in Hollywood. So it's something where, you know, I definitely made some poor choices and a lot of mistakes, and to keep, you know, seeing it over and over again is, you know, it's an embarrassing situation.
I would imagine did you get paid for this story at all?
I did not. I wasn't part of writing of the movie. That was done by Tommy Martino. He's the one that helped him out with it. He was a guy that was involved in the whole scandal. I didn't want anything to do with it, and then I was hoping it was going to go away if I wasn't involved, but they kept saying they were going to make the movie with or without me.
Wow.
And they came to my house after it was done, and they showed it to me, and I thought there was a good message in the movie about personal choices and how those personal choices not only affected ourselves, but the people we love the most, and that's our family. So with that being said, and with the profits going to a school that, you know, has physically and mentally challenged individuals, you know, I thought that it was good for me to get on board and do some marketing for it, so I helped them out.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you walked the red carpet, right, of the movie premiere night and all that sort of stuff. So if somebody asked you 20, 30 years ago that there'd be a movie made about your life as an NBA referee, would you have thought they were crazy?
No doubt. I mean, I would have thought maybe it was something else not to do with a gambling scandal. That's for sure. But again, you know, if I was a guy that could turn back time, I'd be the first one in line, and I'd still be reffing on the NBA courts, running up and down the court with the greatest athletes in the world. But unfortunately, we all know we can't do that.
What is it you miss most about officiating in the NBA?
Being on the court with you know, the rest of the staff. There was guys that were a lot of fun, great to hang out with, and you know, the excitement of you know, officiating in front of 20,000 people. It was played well and gave you the summers off to do whatever you wanted to do with your family. So it was just all around great job.
Now, there are some movies out there that are, say, based on a true story, but then, you know, you talk to some people. I remember the movie Rudy, right? Rudy is one of my favorite sports movies of all time, Tim, and I'm sure it's one of yours as well. The real Rudy Rudiger lives here in Las Vegas, and I've talked to him time and time again about the movie, and he said, yes, some of those scenes didn't happen. It's not all true. Some of it's true, some of it's not true. It's made for Hollywood. So I want to get your take on this movie. Is this largely true to life, or is it not?
I think it's 70 to 80% true. There's a lot of things in the movie that didn't happen. They had me smoking out of a bong. They had me drinking a lot of scotch, which I never drank. I'd be sick for a month if I ever drank scotch. But a lot of little things. They have Tommy Martino getting beat up. So there's a lot of little things. But the thrust of the story of the three of us who got together and started to do these things that we shouldn't have been doing, you know, is really what you know, the story is about, and a lot of the choices that we all made and how it affected not only ourselves but our family. So, you know, that part of the story they have, and of course, any movie that they do Hollywood-wise, they always spice it up a little bit.
Sure, no question. If you're just joining us, former NBA referee Tim Donaghy talking about the new movie that's out about his life called Inside Game. Also, he is a professional NBA handicapper now at RefPicks. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, Tim, I want to just get your thoughts on the start of the NBA season, right? I mean, this is kind of interesting times for the NBA, but before we get to the actual teams and what's going on out there, you have to have an opinion on what transpired with Daryl Morey with the Houston Rockets and the issue between China and the NBA, the way players handled it, the way the NBA handled it. What did you make of that whole scenario?
You know, it was very strange. I think they should have kept their mouth shut and kept their opinions to themselves, because there's a lot of revenue that's coming in from China, and the bottom line is everybody wants to be able to profit from that revenue, and it looks like now parts of it are going to be pulled from the NBA. So I think that they just would have been better off having an opinion and keeping that to themselves.
Do you think it's a
Chris, you got to get
my
your
mic's not on.
Go ahead, Chris.
Tim, do you think it's they're trying to basically keep a balance, right, of not only the whole political side of it, but of course there's the financial side when it comes to the NBA, because so many NBA players and of course the NBA itself have financial interests over there that could very well dictate how they address these political situations.
Oh, 100%. It always comes down to the bottom line of money when you're dealing with the NBA, and we see that time and time again when it comes to playoff series, when they're trying to get the series to go 5, 6, and hopefully 7 games. We saw it several years ago when David Stern did that famous interview when they asked him what would be your favorite matchup for the NBA Finals, and he said the Lakers versus the Lakers. So, it's always the bottom line of global money-rated ratings for the NBA, and that's how it's always going to be.
So I have to ask you this. Perhaps the biggest misconception with your situation was that people say, oh, yeah, that guy Tim Donaghy, he fixed NBA basketball games. And I know you've always said that was not the case. You gave them information based on the officials you were working with, so on and so forth. But can you understand why people would think that you did fix games? And the reason why I say that is because there was a lot of money involved. You were hanging out with a lot of the wrong people. And when you're working a game and you're going to be getting paid a certain amount of money if one side comes in rather than the other, I think most logical people would say, well, of course, Tim, it's got to influence some of the calls you made in a game. Like, how could it not? How can you say that you did this game, totally square, knowing everything that was going on behind the scenes? I think that's a fair question, right?
Oh, absolutely, and it's a very valid question. And if I was on the other side, I'd be asking the same thing. But the bottom line is we won at 80, 85% correct, so I was never put in a box where I needed to go out and do that. The NBA and even the FBI did a thorough investigation and said that I never went out there, made a call in the game to make sure a bet won. Phil Scala, the supervisory special agent for the FBI, wrote the foreword for my book, Personal Foul, and said I told the truth at every turn. So, but I get it. I get that people are going to say you had the whistle in your mouth. You were going to get something if the team won. To be honest with you, there were times where I hoped we lost. We won so much, I was afraid red flags were going up all over the place, and we were going to get caught. So a loss here and there really never bothered me.
Well, so you're telling me
it makes it more plausible that it could actually happen.
So you're telling me there were games that you officiated where you looked at the score and you said to yourself, oh, my God, we're going to win this one, too. This is not good for us. Were there moments in games where you actually looked at the score and you thought that?
Not at that time, but definitely afterwards. We won so much, and I'm thinking, it'd be good to have a loss thrown in here every now and then because I didn't know how much money they were betting, and I later found out that they were betting hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions per game, and that's why the lines were moving 4, 5, and sometimes 6 points in Vegas.
Wow. You're like Matt Damon in Rounders when he said, "Hey, you got to go back in there and make it look good, right, with the Russians."
Right, right.
So you're a sports handicapper now with RefPicks.com. I do the same thing. Legalized sports betting. Colorado just legalized about 2 weeks ago. Now there's 19 states with legalized sports betting. When I see a line, I get the indication that either the game, and it just makes zero sense whatsoever. And I'll give you an example of a line right now. Today, the Magic are playing the Sixers. The Magic are favored by 2.5 points. They should not be favored in any circumstances against the Sixers, in my opinion. But when I see a line, I either think that there's something either wrong with the line, there's possibly a rig taking place of some sort, or there's just a crazy matchup between players. Do you see the same thing now as a handicapper?
Oh, absolutely. I think there may be an injury that maybe Vegas is privy to that the public's not at this point. But for the Magic to be favored by the Sixers, if the Sixers are healthy and have all of their starters playing, is just absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, so I want to, speaking of sports handicapping, I don't want you to give out too much of the information that you have at RefPicks, but I think this is a fair question to ask. Give me an official that you would say you would lean towards always betting the over on, and give me another official working today that you would lean towards an under. Can you do that for us?
Well, I haven't really looked at the officials yet today. I've been doing interviews
In general terms. Yeah.
In general, I mean, you look at a guy like Kenny Mauer, who's one of the top referees in the league, who likes to create a flow to the game where there's an up and down atmosphere, and he really doesn't like to get involved in slowing the game down. He's a guy that if he's with another guy that likes to create a flow like he does, you would go with the over a lot of the time. There's other guys that like to blow the whistle a lot and slow the game down. There's free throws and there's stoppages in play, and there's really not a good flow to the game at times. And you want to go against them if they have another referee on the court in that crew to where they're going to do the same thing. So it's really just seeing what the matchups are crew-wise for the referees in order to do that. It's not any one specific referee, but It's when there's two together or maybe even three together.
So I have an interesting question about that, Tim. You and Brian were just talking about, the impacts of referees on actual games. And I would contend, look, it's about the players, right? The players play the game. They're going to be the one that's dictated. But I had a chance to interview you a couple of years ago when I was at another station, and we brought up a situation, a scenario, let's put it that way, in the playoffs where there's a certain referee, Scott Foster, okay, where, certain things took place in games where, you would tend to lean towards a certain direction when he was in the game. And I was just curious about your thoughts as far as referees being able to dictate it that way.
Oh, no doubt about it. A referee like Scott Foster, when he has a team that really he's not happy with, it maybe have embarrassed him on the floor or have embarrassed him in the newspaper or whatever. We saw, I think it was the Dallas Mavericks where, there was a situation where a lot of those games didn't pan out for Dallas when he was on the floor. There are things that you need to follow and pick up on and go with when those things are happening, because he's a guy that's going to go out there and likes the attention of his name being in the newspaper with that stuff. So he's going to do everything he can do within the rules to enforce the rules and make them go against Dallas when he has that opportunity, or when something can go either way, he's going to make it go against that team that he's not happy with.
If you're just joining us, former NBA referee Tim Donaghy, new movie out called Inside Game about his life. Also a professional sports handicapper now for RefPicks. Okay, Tim, what is the worst thing that a player ever said to you on the floor that you can say on the radio, of course, and or a fan? Can you give me an example of maybe a fan getting personal with you that you had to throw out of a game, or something that a player said besides like saying F you or something like that, something that you just had to turn your head and said, wow, I can't believe he said that to me?
Well, I had a situation in Portland where there was a woman sitting in the front row, a very attractive woman, about 30 years old, told me I sucked and threw a full water bottle at me and almost hit me in the head. But other than that, it's tough to repeat what the players say to you when they get mad on radio. Of course, it's something where you don't want the profanity out there. But Rasheed Wallace, Gary Payton. There's somebody that, of course, will really go after you and use every name in the book to, get back at you if they think that they're not getting the calls they deserve.
Now, you've said in your book, which is a great read, by the way, that there were games where you knew you were going to tee up a guy like a George Karl or Larry Brown. You knew you were going to tee them up with your partners before the game, like right away, right? Can you talk to me about one of those stories?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you an example again with Rasheed Wallace. Everyone knew he was a hothead, so we'd all throw up $20 in the locker room to see who the referee was that was going to give him the technical foul before the other two referees. And if you did it,
that's great.
You scooped up the $60.
So you're sitting there with like a Joey Crawford or a Kenny Mauer. I just want to set the scene here. This is before an NBA basketball game, and somebody says, "Hey," with your crew, with three guys, somebody throws up $20 and says, "Hey, I'm offering $20 to the first guy that tees off Rasheed Wallace." I mean, is that the way it worked?
Oh yeah, but you were the guy that you felt you were going to win that bet, so I'll get him first, and everyone put up $20, and whoever got him first scooped up the 60. I'll give you one better. There were also times where we offered up $20 to see who could hold out on calling a foul the longest, and bodies would up on court. People would be getting across the head, and nobody would be blowing the. We'd be laughing because it's all about who got the $60 in the locker room.
So you're telling me there could be millions and millions of dollars of action on a basketball game, and the reason why you guys aren't calling something early in a game is so you can win that $60 pool. I just find that fascinating. Who is the most difficult player that you've ever had to officiate?
Again, Rasheed Wallace, because on the court, I think his emotions always got the best of him.
Yeah,
his competitive nature was just through the roof. I've since talked to him off the court, away from the game of basketball, and he's one of the nicest guys you could ever imagine. So I think a lot of these guys, their competitive natures just really get the best of them, and they go out on that floor and they just think that they are always getting fouled and never fouling anybody. So it's tough for the referees and the players at some point, to get along.
You're in a room, Tim, with David Stern, mano a mano. You have a conversation with him. How do you think that conversation goes, and what would you say to him?
It doesn't go good. I think he's an arrogant, fat little prick, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, this whole situation could have been handled much differently than the way it was. I think if Adam Silver was in charge when this all went down, I think we would have sat down and I would have explained to him what I did, how I did it, and the imperfections that they have in their business. But instead, David Stern wanted to paint me as one bad apple,
right,
and put me out there in the media as somebody that did this all by himself, when in fact that didn't happen. And even further, Michael Francisi, who is a captain in the Colombo crime family, who has since become a preacher, has said in the 1990s 3 NBA referees were on his personal payroll, and none of them were named Tim Donaghy. So there was a lot of stuff that went on and allowed me to pick these games at 80% correct, and a lot of them were because of the imperfections of the NBA and how they conducted business.
Wow, so you're saying that a lot of this was going on, no one really knew about it, but David, or maybe some people did, but David Stern needed to find a scapegoat, and you were that scapegoat, despite the fact that other refs were probably doing the exact same thing at a higher level and actually with the mob.
No doubt about it, but yet I'm not here to say I didn't do something wrong, because I certainly did, but I just think the whole situation could have been handled much differently.
Tim, it leads me, my question is that, of course, we are now in 2019. What do you think the possibility is that there are still officials out there that are able to get into some nefarious activity when it comes to NBA basketball?
I think it's not going to happen, because I think that they're probably being educated much more now than they did when I was there. I think they can see what happened to me in my life when I did what I did, and they're going to stay away from it. I think the next scandal you're going to see is at the college level, when some of these kids aren't going to go to that next level, and somebody's going to come to them and say, here's $20,000, you're favored by 15.
Right.
You can still win the game, but just win by 10, 11, 12, 13. Just don't cover the spread. And here's $20,000. You're never going to the NBA. You're not going to the NFL. And these are kids whose family could use that extra money. I think that's where you're going to see the next scandal.
Do you think that we will see, because I've heard from several actually really good sources that the NBA, or that Vegas is getting an NBA team very soon. How soon do you think that happens, and what team do you think it's going to be?
It's going to be one of these teams probably that, isn't doing well with the fan base in their city. They're probably going to wait to see how the NFL does in Vegas and how the NHL does in Vegas. And if they're doing good, I'm sure the NBA is going to be right behind them. It's probably going to be one of these smaller market teams that don't really have that global attention, that if you put them in Vegas, they get much more attention for the league.
Tim, last question for you. I want to give you a chance to not only plug your book, which is a fantastic read, by the way. It's a great book. I read it myself. But I also want to give you a chance to plug Ref Picks as well. By the way, I do think your next book should be called The Fat Little Prick. I think that would be a great title.
Solid title right there.
For your next book. But, Tim, all seriousness, give out the information for Ref Picks. How can people find you and pay you to give them some winning picks?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's refpicks.com, and we have guys that handle each individual sport. And I get back to everyone, even if it's just to give them a little bit of advice if they're using gambling as a form of entertainment, and help them out. And of course, we have the movie Inside Game that's out. It's done very well, and there's a great message in the movie about personal choices. So it was, of course, something I wanted to get involved in at first, but unfortunately for me, it's a story that never seems to die when you talk about having the mob, gambling, the NBA, and everything else that they have in the movie is something that everyone just can't get enough of.
No doubt. Tim, I always appreciate it when you take some time to join this show. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your success over there at Ref Picks. Really do appreciate your time, and hope to have you on again sometime, maybe around when the playoffs come around. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim.
That is former NBA referee Tim Donaghy, who it sounds to me doesn't really enjoy reliving his past. And this movie, Inside Game, he's probably done a lot of interviews and he's done a lot of stuff in regards to it. But I'm happy for him, actually, because I don't think he's a horrible guy. I don't. I actually think he's a decent guy who got involved with the wrong set of people.
Well, he's very opportunistic. He took the opportunities when he had them, and his old profession afforded him those opportunities.
Let me ask you this question. Let me ask both.
A lot of people would do that.
Let me ask both of you this question. Do you believe him when he says he never made a call in any game to influence one of those bets?
No.
You don't think he did?
I'm with JD on this
No,
one.
I would say no.
Yeah, I'm with JD.
I would say no as well because it's just the flow of the game, right? I mean, you're an official right there. Brian, you know the deal when it comes to officials and how things transpire during a game. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, by default, that spread has to be in the back of your mind.
And I hate to call the guy a liar,
well, I think if he says that he did,
then he could have gone to jail for a longer period of time.
It's a crime. I mean, it's a serious crime.
You're telling me you got these mob people behind you. There are tens of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 more than that at stake.
Of course,
and you're
it's
telling
on
me
your
that
mind
didn't.
at that point.
You're telling me that didn't influence any of your calls.
The crazy part was that he mentioned how he basically believes that David Stern made him a scapegoat, despite the fact that other refs were doing the exact same thing at a higher level with the mob, with the family that he mentioned, and that someone had to take the fall for it, and he was the fall guy. I don't think he's ever mentioned that to anybody before.
I will say this, though. I think it was more about his knowledge, right? And it was about the information as far as, the other officials and what was going to transpire as far as, his actual calls in the game that was going to impact what was going to happen as far as, their bets. In my opinion.
I'll say this. If you asked me who would you rather have a drink with, Tim Donaghy or anybody from the Trump family, I would say Tim Donaghy because I think it'd be a lot more enjoyable to have a drink with. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. But, I'm sure there are some things that we can get from him off the record.
I'll tell you, man, that the Trump family, anyone in the Trump family would have some stories. Donald Trump Jr. would have some stories. Eric Trump would have some stories. I mean, stories that nobody else has. Donaghy would be great, too. I'd like to have Donaghy in studio.
But to Brian's point, though, about being a nice guy, Scott Wolf, the actor who actually went to the premiere, was talking about this when he watched the movie, and he said, look, they did. These guys did a lot of bad things, but they seemed like all nice guys, right? It wasn't like they were all just curmudgeon, just bad people you don't want to hang around with. It was just nice guys that made bad decisions regarding gambling in the NBA.
Because we're up against a break, but what you're talking about, I remember I played in some illegal underground poker games in Manhattan, and a friend of a friend ran one of these poker games, and he said, because he knows I get a little crazy at the poker table, he said, Brian, don't open your trap. I said, why? You got guys packing heat here. These are literally guys that are made guys that have probably killed hundreds of people in their life. Don't say a word. I probably needed to be wearing a diaper at that moment. But the point I'm trying to make is they were the nicest guys in the world. They were giving me high fives when I won a hand. They were asking me about radio. They were the coolest guys in the world.
And that's what Oscar Goodman says when you interview him, right? He says when it comes to the people that are in the mafia, the made guys, they're the nicest guys in the world.
They were the nicest guys. Anyway, we appreciate Tim Donaghy taking some time to join